Atlanta, Georgia, 2017. A 7-year-old boy disappears without a trace. His name is Abdul Aziz Khan, and the last person to see him alive was his own mother. What started as a complicated family custody case soon turned into a nightmare worthy of a thriller. A desperate mother, a heartbroken father, and a mystery that would last 7 years. Little Aziz vanished days before a crucial court hearing. His mother, Rabia Khalid, and the boy's stepfather, Elliot Blake Bourgeois, were also missing. Parental abduction, planned elopement. The authorities were left with more questions than answers. 7 years later, in a shocking twist, Abdul Aziz was found alive hundreds of miles away in Colorado. How did he manage to stay hidden for so long? What prompted his mother to take him and hide him? This documentary unravels the story of a prolonged disappearance, the psychological ordeal of its protagonists, and the conspiracy theories that arose around the Abdul Aziz Khan case. At the end of November 2017, the Khan family was preparing for an outcome in court. Abdul Khan, Aziz's father, was on the verge of gaining full custody of his son after a bitter legal battle. On the other side, Rabia Khalid, Aziz's mother, saw how her world changed drastically. On the morning of November 28th, Abdul arrived at the court full of hope of being reunited with his son. But Rabia and Aziz's seats were empty. Hours passed, and neither Rabia nor the child appeared before the judge. At first, the paternal family thought it was another deliberate delay by Rabia, another tactic to buy time. But soon, the concern turned to panic. Abdul frantically called Aziz's school. No one had seen him in more than a week. She learned the devastating truth. Her son had disappeared. Rabia Khalid fled with Aziz shortly before losing custody. She was not alone. She was accompanied by her new husband, Elliot Bourgeois. Together, they had devised a meticulous plan. They took Aziz out of school days earlier, sold their cars, left their apartment, and disconnected their phones. All signs of his life in Atlanta vanished overnight. By the time the authorities wanted to act, the runway was already cold. Let's imagine for a moment the scene. A mother hurriedly packing suitcases during the Thanksgiving holiday, a child confused but trusting her, and a stepfather closing the door behind him, aware that they would not return. That was Aziz's last night in Atlanta, the night he began his life in the shadows. What leads a mother to kidnap her own child, to give up everything and live as a fugitive? To understand this, we must delve into the mind of Rabia Khalid. Rabia, 32 years old in 2017, was an intelligent and prepared woman, an epidemiologist by profession, with a postgraduate degree in public health. Those who knew her describe her as having a strong and determined personality. During her marriage to Abdul Khan, she showed a controlling and reserved character, accustomed to getting her way. When her relationship with Abdul deteriorated in 2014, Rabia began a fierce fight to keep Aziz by her side. According to the father's relatives, Rabia went so far as to make serious but unfounded accusations against Abdul to prevent him from gaining custody. This behavior suggests a complex psychological profile. Was Rabia a mother truly convinced that she was protecting her child, or could she simply not bear to lose control? possibly both. In her mind, running away with Aziz might have been justified as an act of love and survival. It is common in parental abductions for the abductor to rationalize his act by saying that he saves the child from danger, real or imagined. Rage seemed to believe that she alone should raise Aziz, even if it meant separating him from everyone else. By her side was Elliot Blake Bourgeois, Rabia's new husband. Elliot, a man with a background in neuroscience, also left his life behind without looking back. Why would an educated professional join such an escape? Analysts suggest several possibilities. Perhaps the power of Rabia's persuasion, combined with Elliot's love for her, led him to believe in the cause. Perhaps rage convinced Elliot that Aziz was in danger with his father, or perhaps he shared the resentment towards Abdul. Another possibility is that Elliot also had a rebellious side and was willing to break the rules for a new life. His profile could fit someone who is impressionable, but also determined. He abandoned his job, his friends, and all stability to immerse himself in clandestinity with Rabia. Both Rabia and Elliot showed coolness and calculated planning. Those who investigated the case described them almost as characters in a novel, selling belongings, changing identities, living a double life. To achieve this without being detected, they needed discipline and cold blood. Psychologically, living on the run for years demands enormous pressure, constant fear of being caught, social isolation, and the burden of deceiving even the child himself about reality. Rabia had to assume not only the role of mother, but also of fugitive, teacher at home perhaps, and liar by necessity. Elliot, on the other hand, had to renounce his own identity to adopt a new one, sustaining the lie day after day. The years went by, and the case of Abdul Aziz Khan became a painful mystery. Federal authorities, including the U.S. Marshal Service, followed leads from state to state. Rabia and Elliot had had connections in multiple places: Louisiana, Georgia, Minnesota, California, Canada. They could be practically anywhere. As the official search stalled, conspiracy theories and hypotheses emerged to explain how a woman, a man, and a child could disappear so completely in the digital age. One theory suggested that Rabia had turned to an underground network of support, perhaps loyal friends or family members willing to hide them. Let's not forget that being a parental kidnapping, some relatives could have sympathized with her and helped hide the child. Were there accomplices? Her own parents in Georgia were questioned and gave evasive answers, fueling suspicions that Rabia's family knew more than they admitted. Another speculation pointed to the couple adopting false identities. Subsequent charges would confirm that they did indeed use fraudulent documentation. During those 7 years, it is likely that Aziz did not even use his real name. Perhaps Aziz grew up under another name, in another school, without knowing that he was on lists of missing children nationwide. There were even those who thought that the trio could have left the country. Given Rabia's cultural background, from a family with South Asian roots, and her international ties, some theorized that she might have taken refuge in India, Pakistan, or Canada, far from the reach of US authorities. However, moving abroad with a child without real passports would have been risky. Other theories spoke of a life totally outside the system, away from technology, living on cash to leave no financial trace. perhaps in rural communities or as part of self-sufficient groups. Imagining an epidemiologist and a neuroscientist choosing to live off the grid sounds extreme, but for a long time, nothing seemed out of the question. In 2022, the case regained some media attention when it appeared in an episode of the Netflix series Unsolved Mysteries, titled Abducted by a Parent. Thousands of viewers learned about Aziz's story, his childhood photography, and a digitally updated portrait showing what he might look like at 13 years old. Such global exposure was expected to yield new clues. Would anyone recognize Rabia, Elliot, or Aziz himself? However, the months passed and the mystery persisted. It seemed that Rabia Khalid and his family had evaporated. The absence of answers was fertile ground for conspiracies. Did Rabia have many hidden financial resources? Or did they survive with stolen identities and modest jobs under the table? 7 years of uncertainty weighed on Abdul the father, who described his life without his son as a time stopped. Every day without Aziz was an eternity of worry and guilt for him, wondering where and how his little one would be. February 2025, Highlands Ranch, Colorado. What began as a routine 911 call for a possible home invasion turned out to be the final chapter of this desperate search. A neighbor alerted police to strange movements in an apparently uninhabited house for sale. When Douglas County deputies arrived, they found something unexpected. 2 children waiting inside a car parked in the driveway, alone and scared. One of those children was a 14-year-old teenager who caught the attention of officers for his resemblance to the photo in national alerts. After verifying his identity, there was no doubt that young man was Abdul Aziz Khan, who had disappeared for 7 years. Next to him was a younger girl, a younger sister Aziz would have met during the escape, Rabia and Elliot's daughter, born in hiding. Inside the empty house, the agents arrested Rabia Khalid and Elliot Bourgeois red-handed. They had illegally entered that unoccupied house, perhaps seeking temporary shelter. His long escape ended that night with sirens illuminating the bare walls. Rabia and Elliot were immediately arrested. The list of charges was extensive: second-degree kidnapping for having held Aziz all this time, falsification of documents and identity for the false names they used, provision of false information to the authorities, and search. A judge set bail of $1 million for each, reflecting the seriousness of the case and the risk of flight. Finally, after years of anguish, Abdul Aziz was safe. The reunion with his paternal family was emotional. His father, upon hearing the news, felt relief and overwhelming joy. "My heart returns to my chest," he said through a family statement in which he thanked the authorities. The family asked for privacy to rebuild their lives and help Aziz heal from this experience. The case of Abdul Aziz Khan is a story with a bittersweet but hopeful ending. Bittersweet because it reveals the deep scars left by family conflicts taken to the extreme. A child grew up separated from his father, living a lie, and a mother will face severe consequences for her actions. Hopeful because Aziz was found alive, something that unfortunately does not happen in many cases of missing children. Now, new chapters begin for those involved. Aziz, 14, must adjust to a life outside of hiding, reunite with his biological father, and possibly receive psychological support to understand his own story. Rabia Khalid and Elliot Bourgeois face justice. Their motives will be examined in court, where they may argue that they acted for protection. But beyond the legal verdict, the question remains as to why. Was this act the result of a mother's inordinate love and fear of losing her child, or the culmination of a selfish obsession? Or perhaps both at once? For 7 years, Abdul Aziz Khan was a ghost, a name on missing child posters. Today, he is once again a son, a brother, a real teenager with a future ahead of him. Her case reminds us that sometimes reality surpasses fiction. A mother capable of outwitting an entire country, false identities, conspiracy theories, and a fortuitous and unexpected outcome. At the NOXFERA channel, we have explored this incredible story with rigor and seriousness. Let this lesson remain. Love and fear are powerful forces, capable of engendering the darkest decisions. But in the end, the truth finds its way.